15 years ago, I asked myself, where did I come from? Why am I here? What happens after we die? Who am I? I struggled with these questions before I left to become a Buddhist monk all those years ago. I thought I needed to meditate, to practice mindfulness, to unlock some kind of knowledge inside of me that would answer these big existential questions. But the knowledge I found after practicing thousands of hours of meditation was that all these questions had the same answer. To understand how that is, we need to look at why we find a question such as what happens after we die so important. What is it inside of us that makes us feel that this is a question we need to answer before we can fully enjoy our lives? When we ask, what will happen next? What will I experience when I leave this body? It can cause a sense of worry or even anxiety because we are important. We don't want to just die and disappear, since we feel that we as a person are important. And as such, there has to be a bigger picture where we fit in. But what if we are not looking for an absolute truth? What if what we're actually looking for is absolute relief? In Buddhism, distortion is called dukkha, which is roughly translated into suffering, even though that word originally was used to describe what it was like to have a wheel that was turning with friction, with tension, with a lack of smoothness, which is how a wheel should turn. But we're not some farmer 5,000 years ago trying to figure out why our wagon is heavy to pull. No, we are struggling with life's important questions here. Imagine that you have reality as it is in your right hand, and your desire for what your reality should be in your left. In one hand, you hold reality, and you know you will eventually die, even if you don't want to think about it. In the other, well, you have your desire to continue living and experiencing life as it is, as this person that you identify as. When these two sides don't match, we feel a friction, we feel a distortion, and in some cases even suffering because of it. So people try to do these two things. They try to change their reality, eat healthier, exercise, learn about how to live a longer life. Highly recommended things to do for sure. But no matter what you do, you cannot change the reality that you will, as will eventually all of us, die. Or they try to change their desires by adopting a new set of beliefs. If you become a Buddhist or Hinduist, you'll adopt the philosophy of rebirth or reincarnation, as the Hindus call it. By doing so, you don't have to confront the idea of dying, since you have now pacified that feeling by believing that you will be reborn as someone or something else. That is, until you are convinced otherwise. And then you're back to square one again, since you never stop to look at the cause of your question. But there is a third option that people either don't realize or believe they can do to make themselves feel less distortion in the presence of life's challenges. I didn't even realize that this distortion inside of me was a problem until 13 years ago, when I had been staying non-stop at meditation centers for 5 or 6 months in a row. When all of a sudden I lost all of my emotions. I felt a numbness that prevented me from feeling joy, love, happiness, anything at all except for this vibrating, uncomfortable numbness all over. I remember thinking to myself, oh no, I broke my mind. I did something wrong with my meditation, and my mind is now forever ruined. I barely sleep for 2 nights in a row. The first night I went to bed, I kept waking up sweating. My whole body was vibrating and I felt numbness everywhere. I tried going through the motions to meditate, but the distortion, the uncomfortableness inside of me was too overwhelming. Over the course of the day, I thought, I'm never going to be able to feel love again, feel compassion, or feel oneness with anyone. In fact, I likely be committed to a mental hospital because someone who's like this surely can't function in society. Going to sleep the second night, I found myself crying, and I didn't get more than an hour of fitful sleep. And when I woke up, I was even more distraught. I became a Buddhist monk to help other people, to be a kind person who did good things in the world. And instead I'd become this numb, lethargic thing that no one would want to be around. That day when the lay people brought us food, I couldn't even put on a front of gratitude for what was offered. I was sitting on a dais with the other monks and at least 100 people watching us eat. I had tears running down my cheeks as I tried to force food down my throat and thought to myself, fuck it. I can't take this anymore. If I ruin my mind and have to go to mental hospital, so be it. I give up. And all of a sudden, it was like a veil that I hadn't realized was there had been pulled away, and I could see again. I noticed how it was easier to breathe, how the colors around me were more vivid, and even how beautiful that hairy back of a Chinese monk all of a sudden appeared to be. The pain I felt from the thought, I've gone crazy and I will live at a mental hospital for the rest of my life, was completely gone. Not because it was no longer true, but because I was no longer resisting it. By working directly with the distortion between these two, it doesn't matter if your reality and desires match. You can have a sense of well-being and peace, realizing that you're creating this friction, this suffering inside of you, when you are not where you want to be. But don't mistake this for positive thinking or denial of your feelings. Instead, it's the total acceptance and surrender to what you're feeling that will make the distortion go away. So, what is the common answer to the big existential questions? Well, today when I think about what will happen after I die, where do I come from? Who am I? I don't feel any uncomfortableness or unease inside of me at all. Therefore, there is nothing that moves me towards finding an answer, which is why these questions seem so urgent to begin with. I simply look at them and realize that the answer they all have in common is that they cannot be answered. And even if they could, knowing those answers would have no real bearing on our well-being anyways. We spend so much of our lives running after and fighting wars about answers to questions that can never be answered, except for what you choose to believe in. But when you decide to face this distortion, this suffering, and the uncomfortable feelings of unsmoothness inside of you, you will be able to go beyond these questions and take more interest in your fellow human beings and what's happening right in front of you. From my experience, life becomes infinitely more enjoyable, both for you and the people around you. It should be noted that the techniques and distortion method I use is not what is generally practiced in Buddhism. And even if you understand the concept of it, it's not an easy thing to do. But I found that it's done wonders for everyone who adds it to their practice. To understand more background and the reasons behind me having this approach, I recommend you watch this video here. It will give you a better understanding of how distortion works inside of us and how you can make life a more enjoyable experience.